In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On earth, he created man in his own image and likeness, and gave him dominion to subdue it. And on the seventh day, it is finished.
Hello again, this is Tony Stitt, and welcome to another edition of the It Is Finished New Covenant Concepts series. My name is Tony Stitt, and I'm here to teach New Covenant concepts just to let you understand what Jesus Christ did in the New Covenant. And as I mentioned last time, I talked about Abram. And you may say, why Abram? What does he have to do with the New Covenant? And it is very important because the New Covenant is based on the same type of covenant that God made with Abram, assumed, of course, to be renamed as Abraham. And that's what I'm going to get to today. Abraham walked with God, and the beauty of this whole thing regarding the faith of Abram is that God said, I'm going to show you a place. I am going to. So Abraham left his father's home, his father's house, his kindred, and his country for what God was gonna do for him. Because he said, I was gonna make your name great, I was gonna bless you, that you become a blessing. And that obviously was enough to intrigue Abram to follow God. Because you have to understand, Abram's family, they're idolaters. And if you think about it, that anyone that God hasn't really revealed himself to, they didn't have a clue because of what Adam did in the garden, because he lost sight of who God really was, because he lost sight of himself. The issues were there inside of him. Thus, people were grasping. And that's the religions of the world. People are grasping of God, trying to grasp God. So God revealed himself to Abram and made himself known. So, which is a hint for us, because God, he can speak to people. And as I mentioned last time, we may assume what's written when God revealed himself to someone or he spoke to someone, it was in an actual audible voice. And I don't believe that is true, because it does not say that, in every instance. So I believe God moved Abram to go, and he spoke to his heart those things. So moving on, Abram's walking through life, having issues like anyone else, like we would have our own issues just in life in general. But God was with him because God told him to go. So when God sends you somewhere, of course he's with you. He's not going to send you somewhere and just leave you alone. He's going to walk with you. So in this walk, which was a walk of faith from Abram's perspective, is that he was having experiences with God, and God was showing himself faithful to what he said. Because with the Pharaoh and with Abimelech, he saw what God did on his behalf. And Abram's, of course he confessed that, yeah, that was my wife, when he's told Sarai to say that she was his sister. And he saw God move on his behalf, and it was based on the covenant. And which is the important part I want to make sure that you get, is on the covenant it was the issue, because God said it, and it had nothing to do with Abram's performance, because he was scared in both those incidents that he was going to die, that he was going to get whacked because of his wife. So does that say he didn't believe God? But we all have fears, and we can believe, but say, Lord, I don't get what's going on right now. But God was there, and God still fulfilled his word, because he is a faithful God. So as Abram was going through life, God would speak to his heart and says, and there was a situation where Abram said, I don't have any heirs. I don't want this person in my house to inherit my stuff. He wanted a son. And God said, look at the stars, Abram. He was going to confirm what he said. He says, look at the stars. No one's going to be able to number your seed like that, of the many stars. He said, kings are going to come out of your wife. And he told him in another area, said, look at the sand of the sea. That is how your seed's going to be numbered. And think about that. He was pumping Abram. He was filling his heart with faith of his faithfulness, because that was just confirmation of what he said to him from the beginning. Just encouraging him, said, Abram, you walk before me. You'll be perfect. Not that you're perfect within yourself, but you're walking before me will make you that. Because God was making him that. It was not based on Abram's performance, although he learned about the nature of God and the faithfulness of God during these things. Still, he just walked and believed God and walked accordingly. So, as you are aware, that his wife came to him one day and says, hey, and this is Tony paraphrase, why don't you go into my handmaid and have a child through her? And you know the story. There's been issues ever since because of that. That wasn't God's plan. He was going to have his plan fulfilled through Sarah. But I believe it was when he was about 99 years old, God spoke to Abram. He said, Abram, no longer I'm going to call you Abram, which meant great father or high father. Your name is Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. So think about this. When he's told Abram to leave his father's house and kindred and country, he says, I'm going to show you. And he says, I'm going to make you a blessing, that you may be, make you a blessing. But in this instance, he changed his verbiage a little bit. He says, you are no longer be called Abram or great father, but Abraham, a father of many. For I have made you a father of many nations. And what that says right there is paramount to the covenant that he made with Abram and in the new covenant. Because when he said, I have made you this, when God says I've done something, it's done. So at that point, when he changed his name and made that statement, Abram was Abraham, thus a father of many. So, and he said his wife, he blessed her, and she was going to, kings are going to come out of her, so on and so forth. So they laughed, thus the name Isaac, what it means there. They laughed, but they believed what God said. And that belief was what made Abram righteous. So Abraham believed God, and that was accounted for righteousness. And this, again, is the same type of covenant that God made with the new covenant. So God made Abraham, and Abraham walked that out, believing what God said. Because when God said, you are a father of many, Abraham simply agreed with him. Thus, walking it out, bringing it to pass. But of course, we have to do something in the process. When I'm not saying based on behavior, I'm talking based on walking in what God said about him. And of course, what he says about us. So that's the critical point. I want to make sure that you get why the covenant with Abram that God made is the similar type covenant that God made in the new covenant. Because when God says something is, it is. He created the heavens and the earth by saying some things. So we need to look at God's word, not as our word, which can flip-flop, but as a creative force. And when he says something, it is. So, but it's up to us to believe what God says, as Abraham did, and walk it out in faith is when we benefit from it. That is all so important. So I just wanted to make sure that you got that. And I'm sure Abram started creating an area for his baby. Because you got to remember, Sarah was barren. She was barren. It was not possible for her to have children. Not sure why, but that was the case. But they believed God, and that was counted for their righteousness. I want to leave it off right there, but I'm just so excited that this is how the new covenant is built as well, because God says some things about us we may not get, but it doesn't matter if we don't feel that way or understand it, but just walking into it, because we need to understand the integrity of God, because when he says something, you can take it to the bank. Again, this is Tony Stitt, and just to let you know, it is finished.